Hey everyone, in this video I'll show you how I turn this pile of white oak into this beautiful parson's table with a ceruse finish and conically tapered legs. There's a lot of planing, tricky joinery, and I'll show you how I turn these square legs into those beautifully conically tapered legs using a special jig that I cut on the table saw. And again, a lot more of that tricky joinery to attach the legs, a lot of clamping, and a special unique cerused finish. So if any of this interests you, let me show you how it all started.
All right, so this is the material for the project. I buy my material in the rough, so I just wanted to give you guys an example or what they look like as I buy them from the lumberyard. As you can tell, the surface is really rough sawn. There's a lot of bandsaw marks in it and watermarks, things like that. So it's really in the rough, and I have a lot of planing to do, joining to get them into boards. There also, you can see a lot of them they're cupped, so I have to straighten all that out. All this material is way oversized, so I have a lot of room in them to, extract the board from them. So it's not a problem as far as that. But I just wanted you to see how I buy the material. And this is 8/4 white oak. So I will be planing it down to about 1.5 inches for the tabletop and 2 inches for the legs. So, all right, let's get over to the planer. And here are the boards out of the planer. They've all been surfaced and dimensioned to the same thickness. So now all the edges are still extremely rough, as you can see. They have heavy saw marks from the sawmill. So, and they're not perfectly straight. Some of them are, semi-decent, but I will now run the track saw and make a straight line on one side. As you can see here, that's what has to come off of this particular board. So the track saw will make a straight line, and then from that I will put them through the joiner and get the edges perfectly straight. So now that one side has been jointed, as you can see here, I'll now run it through the table saw and get a straight edge on the other side. So here are the boards after they've all been cut to width on the table saw. I left them about 2 inches long so that I can trim it after the top is all glued up. But I've arranged them in a decent pattern for the graining, color. Disregard the spot. I put some paint thinner on it just to see the actual color of the wood, make sure that it all kind of blends uniform from one board to the next. But I've already done my layout for the dominoes that are going to go in between the seams of the boards, and I've laid it out. There's 28 tenons that have to go in this top, and for a more in-depth view of how the domino machine works, you can check out my how to make a bedside storage bench video. That has a more in-depth description of how the domino machine works. But it's pretty simple. One side of the domino gets hollowed out with a loose fit. The other side is tight. And yeah, it's pretty simple. So it's just a matter of drilling out both sides and then gluing it all up. So let me show you quickly how that works. All right, so what I've gone ahead and done is I have put the dominoes on the tight slot of all of the mortised out holes and glued them in so that now I can apply the glue to the loose slot side and then bring them all together and clamp them as one. All right, so here's the top as it came out of the clamps. I've gone over it with a scraper to remove the glue squeeze out. Nothing has been sanded yet. So it came out really good, nice and tight. I'm really happy with this glue up. So next, I'm gonna move on to the parts for the apron. That will come out of this board, which I will split in half and then make the 4 parts of the apron from it. So let me show you that. So I went ahead and made the rough blanks for the apron, but there has been a design change on this table. And although this will be an apron, technically, you're not going to see it. The edge of the table, so this apron will sit flush with the top all the way around the edges, and there will be really no visible apron. It's going to be veneered over, so the top will just look really thick. But either way, these are the long pieces to the apron, let's call it. These are the short pieces, and then these are the 2 mid pieces that will go in the middle of the table across to add support to the top. So those are the parts. They're roughed out. They're not final size yet, but I just wanted to show you the components to it and the fact that there was a design change in the table. Again, I'll show that later, what that will look like. But for now, I'm going to move on to the legs. This is a pretty elaborate and detailed part of the build. So the legs are going to come out of this board. It's 2 inches thick and it's roughed out at this point. They're going to be 30 inches long when they're finished, 2 inches square and rounded and tapered. But I wanted to show you what I have to start with. This board is curved like a banana. So I picked it, well, for 2 reasons. One, because it is curved and I can get away with cutting it up into shorter pieces and making it less of a curve, so I don't have to lose as much material. But also because of the grain, we did like the particular grain of this one for the legs. So I'm gonna take this over to the miter saw and just rough cut it right now to length, and then I will put it on the table saw and rough it to its width. So let me show you that process. And here they are after I rough cut them on the miter saw. You can tell that makes a huge difference. It's no longer looking, you know, as nearly as curved as it was. So now a quick pass on the jointer and we'll get a straight edge, and then I can run it through the table saw. Okay, and now just a quick trim to a rough length before they get molded. Okay, so the legs have been made into their blanks, and they are again 2 inches square and roughly 31 inches long. So in front here is my mock-up leg of what the leg is going to look like. And it has a 1 inch radius here at the top, as you can see there. That's done on the shaper. That is the first process that gets done. And then after I do this, I only have to go about, oh, I don't know, 8 inches or so down the leg, because the remainder of it gets turned on the table saw in a special jig that I have. And I will show you that after this process and explain it. But for now, let's head over to the shaper and do this 1 inch radius. I'm here at the shaper and I have a 1 inch radius round over bit already mounted on the spindle, and that will make the cut for us. I also have a guide bearing on it, just makes it a little safer, but I'll be resting it up against the fence. And again, I only got to go about 8 inches into the material. Don't need to go any more than that. So let me show you how that works. All right, here are the legs off of the shaper. I've done the 1 inch radius at the top of the leg, as you can see here. And I've prepped them right now because I'm gonna begin the process of turning them on the table saw in a special jig to make the conical taper in the leg. So what I've gone ahead and done is I've marked at this point, this is my point at which I do not want to pass or touch anything beyond this line. So the conical taper will end right there. So I've marked each leg at that point. And at the bottom of the leg, I centered it and drilled a 1/2 inch hole. And the reason I did that is because I insert a nylon insert with a 1/4 inch internal diameter hole. And on the top of the leg, I've done the same thing. I've drilled out a 1/4 inch hole to insert the T-nut, which I will now show you the jig that I use to make the conical tapers. And this is a jig that, there's many videos on YouTube itself of people that have made different versions of this same jig. Some are more elaborate than others. And I basically took the ideas from a bunch of them and consolidated them into one that I liked. It was more compact, simple, and didn't take up a lot of space. So the way this jig works, this part is for the bottom of the leg, and this part is for the top of the leg. And the leg with the nylon insert at the bottom will ride on this 1/4-inch bolt. And at the top of the leg, I also have a T-nut, and that is what engages the leg with these teeth so that you can spin it. And this is all spun by the cordless drill from here, and that spins it as I pass it through the table saw. I've also got a bronze bushing on the inside here, which is what acts like a bearing. And this jig can make both straight round tapers and conical ones. So to do the conical, which is what we're doing in this case, it has an adjustable back, and I can lower and raise one end of the leg and the other leg is the other end of the leg as well. And that is what gives me the angle or offset to create the conical taper. So I also have multiple positions in this jig so that for different length legs I can change it, as I need to. So I don't want to spend too much time on the jig itself. I just wanted to kind of briefly let you guys see it. It's pretty simple to make. So let me now show you. I'm gonna insert a leg, and then I'll show you the process of how I go about cutting it. All right, so I've set up a leg in the jig, and you can see, I also want to note, I made a mistake and I put this stop mark at the wrong end of the leg, so that's not anymore relevant. It's at the top of the leg. So yeah, so what happens here is, first step is I'm going to spin it and gradually bring the blade up to knock off the corners and make a circular pole out of it, all even. And then I will offset the angle and begin the taper. So this is a multi-step process. It doesn't take very long, but I do like to take small amounts off. I go about 1/8 or so, maybe 1/4 of an inch at a time to minimize any kind of problems, stuff like that. So pretty simple. Pass it through, raise the blade on each subsequent pass, and it's pretty cool to watch. Okay, so this is the last leg. I've already finished it. And I just wanted to go over a couple of tips. You know, the finish on it is good. It's not perfect, you know. It has to be gone over with hand sanding. I may drop the blade completely and put the orbital on it and spin it as I'm sanding it as well, just like as if it was on a lathe. It'll make it much easier to finish it that way. Another tip, I didn't show it in the video, but it would be a great idea to put a weight on top of the sled to keep the sled from going up and down. The blade puts a lot of force on the piece of wood as it's rotating, and to put a weight on it will greatly improve the finish that you get on the piece itself, because it'll keep it from going up and down. And that's very important. There's not really much of a side-to-side motion at all, so that's not an issue. It's just the up and down motion. So I don't recommend anyone try this jig. I'm not pushing that. This is what I've been using for a couple of years now to make conical round tapers. But if you want to attempt it, you know, go for it. But this one, you know, is a bit risky if it's not done right. So again, that's why I didn't really want to spend too much time on the jig itself. I just wanted to show you how I go about doing it. If you want to attempt it, you know, then by all means do, but please make sure that you practice safety on this one. It is a little dangerous, and go slow with your increments of how you cut it. You know, very little cuts, 1/8 of an inch or less on each one, and just come up on it slowly and creep up on it. That's the safest way to do it. I would not recommend trying to, you know, take a really big chunk. That won't work. The forces on it are too strong, and it will shake the jig as you're trying to push it through. So yeah, so that's it. This is, you know, turned out well. Like I said, this is how they come out. The finish on it is pretty good. I strongly recommend for these, as I saw in the other videos for them, that you use a blade that is a square edge top blade. You know, do not use an alternate top bevel. It will only scratch the piece as you're going through, and you get a poor finish. So you want a flat blade on the top, on the tooth, and you should be good. So, all right, that's it for the legs. Now we'll move on to the skirt and putting that all together. Now that the legs are done, I have to notch out the corners of the top so that the leg can sit in that recess like that. And again, it'll be flush with the top, and the rail will sit on either side underneath the top here. So I have to do the legs first, and then I can move on to the rails. So I will first rough this out close to the line with the jigsaw, and then I've made a template here for the router, and I will go over it with the router to clean it up nice and straight. And then to remove the radius that's left in the corner, I will hand chisel that and then tune it so that it's perfect. So let me show you how that goes. All right, so I'm preparing to attach the legs to the top of the table, and I'm going to use the dominoes to do that. I intend to make a domino cutout right here in the tabletop and a corresponding one in the leg. The only problem is, in order for the domino machine to work, I have two problems here. One, the face of the table, which is what the domino machine rides against and holds against, is missing on this side. So the machine would tilt and I wouldn't get an accurate cut in the surface. So I also have a setback from the face of the cutting part, let's say. So I have two things to compensate for. Let me show you how I intend to overcome that problem. So what I've done here is I've attached two scrap blocks, one on one side and one on the other side of the table. And they are perfectly flush with the face of the table and perfectly flush with the top of the table. So in essence, it gives me, a nice straight line to rest the machine on like this. And to compensate for the depth that this is sitting back for, this domino only needs a 20 millimeter depth cut in it. So my machine, this is just under 2 inches, just barely under 2 inches here. So I've added extra depth to the domino machine so that once it hits here, it'll cut another 25 or so millimeters into this part of the table and create the domino pocket. So a little tricky, nothing major, just have to kind of work your way around it and compensate for the fact that the corner is missing. All right, so let me just show you those domino cuts. And I also forgot to mention that I can't see my center line, which is, I have it on the machine. There's a center line mark that you would overlay on this mark and it will cut perfectly on that. I can't see that because of the recess. So what I've done is measured from here to the side of the machine and then just made a straight line that I can follow from the edge of the machine, and I know that I'll be right on the center line mark. And there you go. So off camera, I've done all the other dominoes for the legs, the side rails. I trimmed the side rails and the end rails to the correct height and width. And I'm working on right now permanently affixing the side rails to the tabletop. I've drilled and countersunk holes to put screws to hold the side rail to the top. This face will get a veneer, so this has to be perfectly flush and aligned. And it also makes the glue up a little bit easier. What I intend to do is once these rails are permanently affixed to the table, I can then do the leg assembly where I'll attach the leg to the end rail like so, and then just slide it into the table as such, and it'll make the glue up much easier. And then I can clamp it both ways to make the joint nice and tight. So I just wanted to go ahead and show you where I'm at. It's a little bit of a tricky layout for the glue up, but so far so good.
So I went ahead and did the glue up for this off camera. I have mid rails here that I'm pointing out. The side rails are already attached. The legs are put in and all clamped from both ways, both directions. It turned out pretty well, and I had to clamp the end rails as well, as you can see here. But it turned out really good. So we shall see once it comes out of the clamps how it turned out.
And here it is, out of the clamps, cured really well. I have the veneers laid on top of it that are going to go on the outside edges. So everything's good, nice and straight. And I have a mock-up on this end. I just temporarily put this veneer on just to kind of give you an idea the look that we're going for. It's a little oversized, it's got to be trimmed after it's glued on. But that's the look we're going for. So let me show you how I put the veneers on. I'm not going to go into too much detail with the veneers. For more detail on how I apply my veneers, go to the coffee table build, and toward the end of the video, I really get into detail about how I apply my veneers. But I will show you quickly how I'm going to do it on this table. Okay, so I'm ready to glue on the veneers. I've already taken the short side here, and I've applied glue to the back of it with a roller. And so I'm just going to show you how I attach it to the table. Okay, so I've jumped ahead a little bit, and obviously the veneers have been applied. They're I've taken it out of the clamps, and I've also gone ahead and I've sanded it to about 120 grit. It didn't really matter because this piece is going to get heavily wire brushed, and I've already gone ahead and done that as well. And this table will have a natural finish in water base, but it will be cerused. That is what the wire brushing is for. One, for looks, it gives it a texture, a character to it, and two, it's to trap the white pigment that I'm going to put in that will only settle in the deep pits of the grain that's created by the wire brushing. And as you can tell, this one has a pretty heavy wire brushing that's been done to it. And I use a machine to do my wire brushing. Let me show you that. I use a Makita. It's a handheld wire brusher, and it's fantastic. It does a great job. If you don't have access to a machine like this, you can do some light wire brushing by hand. I use many times just handheld, wire brushes, and you can get a decent wire brush out of that. However, you won't get to the level that this machine can do. This machine really will go very deep, and you can, get a really heavy wire brush from it. You will not be able to get that from this. Sometimes I've also gone ahead, and if you're doing it by hand, you can wet the surface of the wood with a spray bottle. That will soften all of the soft fibers and make it easier to remove them. However, I don't tend to do that very much just because I don't like putting water on wood, after. It's just, it doesn't go very deep, but it's not something I like to do. Therefore, I recommend, if you're going to do a texture like this, really heavy wire brushing, it's best to have a machine as such. It really gets the job done and done quick. So the way I use this machine is I first wire brush it with the grain. So I'll wire brush like this, straight along the grain, and then I'll come back at a 45-degree angle, and that really gouges the wood, let's say, so to speak, to really pull out the deep cuts, let's call it, in the grain. And that can only really be done by a machine like this. So if you're into something like that, I would highly recommend that you use that type of machine. So, all right, I know, like I said, I've skipped ahead a bit, but sanding is kind of boring. Everybody knows, it's pretty mundane. It's just orbital work. I sanded it out to, like I said, 120 grit. And it wasn't crucial because the wire brushing removes so much material that it's really not necessary. And then after I finished wire brushing, I went ahead and I hand sanded it with 120 grit sandpaper, again by hand, to remove any type of cross hatching that might have been on the surface from the wire brush, things like that, just to balance it out and smooth some of the hairs that are that remain from the wire brushing. So very simple process. It's nothing special. So this table is ready to go. I'm going to apply the first coat of sealer on it, and then from there I'll put one more coat of finish before doing the ceruse. So stay tuned for that. And for my seal coat, I'm using a water-based sealer with a microfiber roller. It's one of the best ways I've found to put on water base. And just to get some small detail areas, I got a little foam pad that I'll use probably for the base of the feet and the legs, and maybe some corner areas that the roller can't get into. But it's pretty simple. I just roll it on, and that's it. All right, so this is the first coat of sealer after it's dried, and I've already gone ahead. I hand sanded it with 220 grit sandpaper, vacuumed it, so I am all ready to go and apply the first coat of finish. It's water-based finish as well, and it's a two-part water-based finish, so it's a 2K or 2-component water-based finish. It's really, really durable, really strong, and it'll make for a great finish on this table. But it's I'm gonna do a total of 3 coats of finish and 1 coat of sealer. So it'll have plenty of protection. Let me show you how to put that on. Same as the first coat of sealer. All right, so I have all of my base coats applied, and now it is time to do the cerusing. And this is where the wire brushing that I had done before is going to come into play. I've created a lot of grooves, let's call it, by scraping out all of the soft areas, the soft grain of the wood, and I've created, like little pits which the paint is going to settle in. And what I use to do the cerusing is Ronin Japan color,
This one happens to be permanent striping white. And this product is very thick. It's a semi-paste, and that's what you really want to do this kind of effect on the surface. And what I do is, and I'll show you in a second, but I wipe it on the grain and I wipe it across the grain. I don't generally go with it because you want it to settle in the grain. And it's gonna get all over the surface, and you know, that's fine because we're gonna wipe it off. And what I do first is I wipe it on, then I wipe it off, and then I clean it with paint thinner on another rag, which will take it off of the surface entirely and just leave it in the grain. And that's what you really want. I've also done nothing to the surface, so I haven't sanded it or anything. This is just the way that the water-based urethane has dried. If I were to sand this with, say, like a 320 grit or something, and then do the cerusing on it, you would get a different type of cerusing, which would have like a cloudy film all over the surface. And it would just make the piece a little whiter, but it's a different effect. We're not going for that in this one. We want it pretty clean. So let me show you how I go about doing that. All right, so I'm just gonna do a small area here. This stuff dries pretty quick, so you have to act pretty quickly. And I'm rubbing, again, across the grain, and I'm pressing into it to make sure that it fills the grain up. And then the rest of it, like I said, we can wipe off and it won't be an issue. All right, I think that's good enough just to get us started. So now I will just roughly wipe it off. This is just a blank rag. There's nothing on it. I don't have any paint thinner on this one yet. But as you can see, it's still kind of cloudy. It's not bad, but it's not quite what we're looking for. So now I have a rag with a little bit of paint thinner in it, and this will help clean it up and just leave it in the grain. Okay, so now that it broke it up, I need another clean rag to clean it off. This stuff likes to spread itself a lot. Okay, so that's the effect that we're looking for here. And this can be done, you know, in sections at a time, because again, you're wiping it off, so it's not, the overlap won't show. You're not going to see anything like that. Plus, it's going to get sanded again once this dries. I will sand it to get ready for the remaining coats of water-based clear that will go over this to seal it in. And there's no issue with that as well. Okay, so the white cerusing has dried. I've gone ahead and hand sanded it once again with 320 grit, vacuumed everything, and you'll see a white haze on it. That's from the sanding. So I am ready to apply the coat of finish. Again, same water base, same application as before.
All right, so here it is, all finished. I applied another coat of finish, so it has a total of 2 coats over the ceruse and 2 coats under the ceruse. So there's a total of 4 coats of finish on this table. And I just want to give you some close-ups of what it looks like. The ceruse, the the wire brushing. You can see how heavy the wire brushing is. I'm really pleased with the way this came out. There are 2 chairs that the customer had already purchased, so this was to match the 2 chairs, and it turned out really well. It matches them pretty perfectly. And again, just really happy with the end result of this table. All right, everyone, so that's going to wrap it up for this build. There were some pretty cool things to learn from this one, and I hope you enjoyed it. And, like I said, learned something from it. The hardest part of this build are the legs. They're conical tapered legs, and they have a square top that transitions into a round leg. A little challenging, and it was pretty cool. And I hope that, if you decide to attempt it, that to make it, I know it's a little tricky with the jig, and it might be seem a little dangerous to attempt it, but the turnout is pretty cool and unique. These are some really nice legs. So another thing that we got to learn from this one in the finishing area is wire brushing, how to do a really heavy wire brush, and in addition to that is the cerusing. It may not be something you have seen before, but certainly is a cool finishing technique that makes a really unique finish. And so I hope you learned some new techniques. Maybe you can implement them on an upcoming project of yours. And I hope you guys enjoyed my content as usual. I hope that if you did, you please hit that subscribe button and give me a thumbs up, like. It really helps the channel out. And with that, I'll see you guys on the next one.